Hello everybody, welcome back to yet another movie review. Today we'll be discussing Rampage. Just finished watching it. Can't remember if I watched it on my free trial of Amazon Prime or if I watched it on Hulu. Pull it up here shortly. You know how it goes. First and foremost, absolutely no one's going to watch anything I put out, obviously. But in case you do, I'll be giving you the breakdown of the movie. I'll give you my overall impressions and grade, read you the logistics in the overview as presented by Google, along with the other rating systems and some setting and just basics about the movie. Then if you've not seen the movie, after I give my grade, you're going to want to shut off the video because there will be spoiler alerts. So today we have Rampage, rated PG-13, released in 2018, an action/science fiction movie with an hour and 47-minute runtime. Yeah, I watched it on Hulu, it looks like, yeah. So, but it says, primatologist Davis Okoye shares an unshakable bond with George, an extraordinarily intelligent silverback gorilla that he's been in his care since birth. When a rogue genetic experiment goes wrong, it causes George, a wolf and a reptile, to grow to a monstrous size. As the mutated beasts embark on a path of destruction, Okoye teams up with a discredited genetic engineer and the military to secure an antidote and prevent a global catastrophe. So, at a budget of $120 million, there's definitely a lot of CGI in this one. There's animation. It did a $428 at the box office. Decent return, seems like. 73% liked it on Google, 45% liked it on Metacritic, 51% liked it on Rotten Tomatoes, and 6.1 out of 10 on IMDb. Overall, like I said, I like the first of the Rise of the Planet of the Apes movies. It's kind of, I don't want to say super similar to that, but again, they just grow to a big size as opposed to becoming extremely intelligent. Again, a lot of the action sequences or the sci-fi, the CGI, I thought it was decent in terms of animation, in terms of production value. The plot was alright, didn't do much for me. The characterizations were a little weak. So overall, I don't know. I'll just give it a C+. Could be entertaining, didn't really do much for me. Again, I don't know if it might be bogging down the gradings with watching so many freaking movies, but regardless, definitely not off-putting, could be entertaining. I like the CGI, characterizations wasn't great, and the plot wasn't novel or interesting or any bit of the writing nuance for me to have wow, that was something different than as opposed to any other movie I've watched. So if you've not watched it, you want to shut off the video, we will be discussing the plot. So the movie opens up, and you have this astronaut. She is on a space mission, and she's basically doing some experiments for a company called Energine or Energy Sign or something. But regardless, she's trying to escape. She's floating around. This spaceship has been ravaged, and she's trying to escape the escape pod. And Dr. Kate the owners of the company, or the characters running it, are Claire Wyden and Brett Wyden. Claire is his sister, and she's the authoritative, knowing what to do one. But they won't let her escape the space pod until she has the research material that they've been working on. And so she has to go back. There's a head floating here and a hand floating there, and nothing super gory or violence, rated PG-13. And secures this stuff, and then gets into this lock pod, and there's this big rat chasing her, like a monstrous sized rat that's been genetically modified with CRISPR, is kind of like the plot. And so she gets in the pod, barely escapes the rat, and then as she's flying back on the escape pod blows up, and all of the debris falls to the earth. And so then you meet Davis Okoye, played by Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson, and he is, again, the primatologist. He's taking a group of people, new students, Amy, Connor, and somebody else, and they are going to just observe these silverback gorillas in the wild. So he runs it. I think he's located in maybe San Diego, somewhere out west at an animal sanctuary. And so he's just approaching, observing the animals in real time. He's got this bond with George, who is the main gorilla. He's an albino silverback, and one I think is Connor. Connor gets scared he's just watching. There's this baby silverback gorilla getting introduced to the troop, and he's kind of having some stare down with the females of the group, and Davis tries to step in and calm him down. Connor gets scared. George, the albino, kind of jumps out of the woods, and the younger Silverback charges Connor, and then George kind of like bumps the younger Silverback out of the way, and Davis is able to calm down George. And so basically just a little opening scene, and then the next day, that happens before the stuff crashes the earth, but just the sequence of the scenes, and then this genetic material rains down on the earth and falls in different places. And so the Claire and Brett are like, we can go recover our research or our anecdote or our whatever this thing is to modify cells. And basically when George comes in contact with this material, as well as this reptile doesn't come into play till later, as well as a wolf, they grow. The next day, Davis shows up, and George has killed a grizzly bear. And so Davis, he's like doubled in size, so obviously they can tell that. They're not sure what's going on. They find the little capsule or whatever to figure out what it is, and they put him into a bigger cage and sedate him or I don't think they sedate him yet, but they put him in a bigger cage to try to figure out what's going on. And so you get introduced to Dr. Kate Caldwell, who was an ex-employee of this energy company or this pharmaceutical or whatever, and she sees the stuff talking about it on the news, and that it's like about the meteors hitting, which is the particulate or the space crash that exploded. And she calls and it's like she starts heading toward, I forget where she goes initially, but she either goes to like a military base or towards this a sanctuary. Regardless, George is growing really big. She goes to the sanctuary because she has an initial run-in with Davis, tells him that she works at this company that has this material or knows what's going on, when in reality she was fired 2 years ago. And so Davis George doesn't get his food. He gets hungry and angry, and so he's strong enough now we can just break out of this enclosure. So he does so. Big carnage scene, like busting down walls, scaring people. Davis saves Dr. Kate, and George is out on the middle of the street, being a gorilla. And so the police pull up, and Davis tries to calm them down, and they initially lower their weapons, and then a bigger military helicopter comes in and shoots George with a bunch of tranquilizer darts, and then they once again secure him again. And so you meet, there was one character I forgot to write it down up here that I actually kind of liked. Agent Harvey. Yeah, he was decent. I'd say he's probably my favorite characterization. Agent Harvey. So you meet him. They take Dr. Kate and Davis into custody with them, and they're flying George on this big plane to basically, I'm not sure where they're taking him, but they're very confident that they have him secured. They've taken into account his growth rate, the amount of blood in his system, blah, blah, blah. And Davis is like, and Dr. Kate's like, this plane's going to get torn apart. And so at this time, as they're flying, that you do learn about this wolf. And so they have mercenaries for hire or something, and so they have this chief mercenary guy. I think the character's name was Zamet. Again, can't really match all of the characters to the names. And so they go try to hunt this wolf. They shoot at it a bunch of times. There's no body. They go down. They shoot at it from a helicopter. They go down on the ground, and then their entire team gets eaten up or destroyed. And so Zamet gets killed along with everybody else. And Claire and Brett, they need to, again, they're just trying to get the blood of these animals so they have their research. And so at this time they decide that they have, Claire has programmed this thing where like she'll emit a low energy frequency generator, and it will perturb the animals, and they'll come to the place to destroy the signal, which I don't know why they would do that exactly. To be completely honest, again, I didn't think the plot was super solid. But regardless, that's what they do. Meaning is that these huge animals come to destroy. They're going to destroy the whole building, your whole company. Like, they didn't think that one through or something. But regardless, that's what's going on. So now all of these animals, you still haven't met the crocodile, and they're going towards Chicago, I believe, to destroy the signal that's bugging them. And so once that happens, George wakes up out of the anesthetic on the plane, and goes crazy, breaks out of the cage, and tears down the wall, or just destroys the plane. And so Agent Harvey, he gets knocked out in this process, and Davis and Dr. Kate, the scramble action sequence, they're able to get on, get some parachutes on, as well as Davis is able to save Agent Harvey. And so they jump out of the plane with parachutes, they land, and they think they're all good, and then they'll find George's body. And so they go to the wreckage after the plane crashes, because George the gorilla did not get a parachute. And so they're going in to find his body, and they go to the wreckage, and he's not there. And so again, they grow really big, they regenerate really fast, your typical kind of nothing new in the science fiction part. But regardless, he's not killed in the plane crash. And him and the wolf are teaming up together, or just working together to go destroy this frequency. And so you meet Agent Park, who's like the FBI. He kind of goes and raids the business, and Colonel Blake, he's kind of he's the overall kind of leader, chief of the military dude, and they're prepping different tactics to kill the animals. So again, they fire on them with different Moab missiles, or this missile or that missile, and it doesn't do anything. And so they're just, do we have to evacuate Chicago? What do we have to do? And so they do end up evacuating Chicago once they get close. And because Agent Harvey was saved by Davis and Dr. Kate, they learn that there's an antidote, or just like something that would calm down the aggression. It wouldn't change the size of these animals, but it would stop them from being super aggressive and destroying everything. And so they go back to this company to retrieve that. And to do so, again, they're still in military kind of custody after the plane crash, but Davis, kind of disarms two service members, and then they're going to go steal a helicopter to get to Chicago. And so Agent Harvey sees them do this, and he basically throws them the keys and go get them, go do your thing. And then Davis is like, no, why did you help me? He's like, because you saved my life. And it's a pretty lighthearted movie. I mean, the characterizations, it's an action adventure kind of fun science fiction thing. But regardless, now he struggles to get the helicopter going, and Dr. Keate's not too sure if he's going to be able to drive the helicopter correctly. But regardless, they get airborne and they start heading to Chicago. So they get there and they go into the building where this company's at to try to find the antidote. They end up finding it, but Claire and Brett have wiped all the servers, and they see them on the security camera as they're getting ready to evacuate. So again, if they're evacuating, why they wouldn't have gotten the blood from the animals like they needed to or whatever. So just having the frequency generator at the headquarters, when the animals are gonna come destroy it, and then they don't even try to get the blood, is just was very sloppy plot development for me. But regardless, Claire sees Davis and Dr. Kate in the laboratory, and goes down there and confronts them with a gun. Well, Brett has the gun initially, and Davis is like, I'm not going to give over the antidote. And then Claire is like, can I see the gun, please? Takes the gun and then shoots Davis in the side, kind of like in the side abdomen area. And so he's down for the count for a little bit. She takes Dr. Kate at gunpoint, and they climb up to the top of the building to get on the helipad. And at this point, the animals have arrived, and they're breaking down the building. And so you've met the alligator now. It's this big crocodile reptile thing that's grown humongous. You haven't seen it because it was underwater swimming. And so regardless, that's what happens. Davis is quickly back on the scene. He's not dead. He's got a bullet wound, but the monsters kind of crawl up the building. Big action sequence going through Chicago, and Dr. Kate still has one of the antidotes, and their plan is to give it to George, the big gorilla, and then they use George to help neutralize these other big animals. And another, again, sloppy thing for the plot was when they're taking out the antidote things, there's a lot more than 3. There's only 3 animals, so it's why don't you take a lot in case you missed the first one or something. Regardless, the animals are there, and it's causing a bunch of havoc, so Claire's thrown off from having the gun, and she basically, the big alligator, or George eats Claire, and so that's how they get the antidote into George, by George eating Claire, and so she's dead. Amy and Connor, the original people, aren't in the movie anymore. But regardless, that's what's going on. And now George, it takes about 10 minutes for George's aggression to calm down. And again, he's known Davis his whole life, so he can do some sign language, stuff like that. But it can communicate with Davis. And so now they're going to team up and fight these other big monsters. So they do that, another big fight scene. And they're shooting him with a bunch of things. I forget exactly how both the first animal dies. The wolf, again, he can kind of like fly now. Again, they just have more adaptations because they're growing. But the wolf can kind of fly, and I think George ends up, or I think David kills the wolf by like somehow like getting a bomb into its like flaps of its like, cause it's like a wolf but it cannot fly, so like in the flap of its wing or something, and like gill, it doesn't have gills, but like somehow get it into its neck and explodes. Regardless, big action scene. The wolf is killed, and now it's Davis and George versus this big reptile. The reptile kind of throws, I don't know, I think it's a big action sequence. I can't remember exactly which animal kills who or whatever. Regardless, George gets pushed back by this alligator, gets impaled with this big steel rod. You kind of think he might die, you don't know. Davis is kind of like lures the big reptile to eat one of the other animals, I think, or at least bite them, and then chase him when he's affecting George. And so Davis is like cowering, about to get eaten by this big reptile, and George comes out of nowhere with a steel rod and like jams it into this big reptile's head. So now both the wolf is dead and the big reptile is dead, and Dr. Kate and Davis are safe, and it's kind of getting to the resolution of the movie. And they call off the final airstrike that was going to happen from Colonel Blake that was going to demolish a lot of Chicago. And so, regardless, George dies, and then about 5 seconds later, Davis sees him opening his eyeballs, and George is playing a joke that he's dead. So George isn't actually dead after he gets impaled and rescues. You kind of think like he succumbs to his wounds after one final push to save Davis. But he's just joking around with him, just being a playful gorilla. And then he asks if Dr. Kate and Davis are doing some of this stuff, and they say no. So that's really kind of the resolution of the movie. Again, an action sci-fi adventure flick, which might not be terrible if you're watching it, not watching 1,000 movies every 5 seconds to produce content that nobody watches. Yeah, unless it's being stolen. But regardless, didn't really do much for me. Definitely not off-putting, but C+, not super entertaining either. So thank you for watching, and I'll see you on the next one, if there is one.